Thank you, everybody, for joining us back here at GCAC's channel. We have another special guest for you guys today as we sit here with Jeff Cole, the founder and owner of US Hemp Brokerage. We're going to dive into his role and talk about why he joined the GCAC reseller program. But before we dive into that, Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Doing really well. Thank you. Absolutely. How about yourself?
Doing really well. It's a beautiful Friday here, starting to get a little cold, and the leaves are definitely changing. But first and foremost, before we dive into that reseller program, talk to me about US Hemp Brokerage, how you founded it, and like what is in this for you? What's the passion in it for you?
Huh. That's a really great question. Kind of a great leadoff question. I think, my passion in this industry is really just that there are so many different uses for the plant, and that the impact that the plant has on society and the environment, especially, is very real. It's actually surreal in some ways. I'm very passionate about the plant. I love to honor it and to love all the impact that it makes. So I try to embrace it. We sell hemp. That's what the U.S. Hemp Brokerage does. So we're on the front lines of making sure that that product that it can be made from hemp gets made from hemp. And that means that we support literally all the way from genetics providers to farmers, cultivators of all kinds, all the way up through consumer packaged goods products that we bring to market for brands. We have 4 different divisions. So we focus on cannabinoids of all kinds in the cannabinoid division. Then we have the materials division, which is really all of the non-cannabinoid industrial materials, raw materials, as well as intermediately processed materials like hempcrete blocks that are unbranded versus a branded DaVita brick, that kind of. So we're pretty wide ranging within how we address the markets. We also have a machinery division and a technology division. And really that technology division is where our relationship with GCAC rests. And it's actually our most exciting program, and it really kind of covers everything within our company. So we're excited to be here on this with you so we can talk a little bit more about that. But the mission of the US Hemp Brokerage is to professionally sell hemp, and that's what we do.
Fair enough. Jeff, I've as I believe a lot of people eventually fall into, you go down the hemp rabbit hole and you see
Right.
just how many use cases are available, and you almost kind of get upset on how much it's been stymied across the years.
Yeah.
And the US is far behind, and we have a lot of progress to make. There's all sorts of medicinal uses, construction uses, clothing, fabric uses. There's all sorts of things that you can do with it. And so it's interesting to see someone else so strongly advocating for it. And I guess now, so you're the founder and owner of US Hemp Brokerage. Can you talk to me about what it means to be a member of the GCAC reseller program, or like what drew you into it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, anybody who knows Kate O'Hara, she definitely is who drew me into it. I mean, she draws everybody in, right? She's like a magnet. She's kind of like the hemp plant itself. It's so attractive to everybody, right? And she's like, so really, I'll pay all the major kudos to Kate. She's an inspiration. I think that GCAC was definitely introduced to me by Kate through some work that she had done and through our relationship. She knew just through getting to know me that I have a very deep passion for sustainability, that my background in advertising and media and branding was really all centered around sustainability. So she made that immediate connection, and then she helped me make the connections between what GCAC is doing, because it was just a perfect match. I mean, it really was. My background includes advertising and branding work, working with very large and small organizations that are truly focused thought leaders, and have been throughout sustainability as it's emerged as a tool, as a need. So GCAC really gives me the ability to combine what we're doing and the need for standards and measures around sustainability to be captured. So to be able to capture the standards and measures around sustainability and to tie that into the blockchain is amazing. It's a game changer for sure. So we have brands. Our brands need to be able to report on their sustainability metrics, especially with all the stuff that's coming in through the new $300 billion, contribution that the U.S. government, i.e., we, are all spending to convert from, a unsustainable fossil fuel-based economy to more of a bio-based sustainable economy.
Yeah.
So that GCAC actually captures all of that data, and they do that in such a way that it's captured through the blockchain and then converted to NFTs. So what you're really able to do is you're able to get truth in branding captured by the blockchain. And that becomes very marketable. The thing I think I like the most about the GCAC programming is not just working with Kate, but with Steve and Brad and really the whole team, is that the sticky marketing campaigns that you can do around truth in advertising and truth in product manufacturing and truth in branding is enabled by GCAC and the blockchain, and that can be monetized through NFTs, is just incredible. It really is. So there are probably about 5 different reasons that we love our relationship with GCAC.
It's really interesting you mentioned when you talk about in terms of ESG and stuff. I feel like there came a period where the majority of people kind of came into the agreement, like, yeah, we kind of want the world to go in this direction, right? We don't want things to be unsustainable. We're tired of damaging things. We want things to do things as best as possible. And a lot of companies and brands started following suit, but a lot of them just kind of claimed to be following suit. Right. And it was hard because there wasn't a technology layer really available to really add the level of transparency that we all wanted. And I think through clearESG, through the FXC platform with GCAC, that really helps provide it. And I think it's one of the best use cases of blockchain technology I've seen come out yet, because a lot of people still have blockchain technology tied just into speculation, but they haven't seen really the power that having a public immutable ledger can provide for people.
It's true. No, it really is true. And in fact, with blockchain really being based on, obviously the basis of blockchain technology were smart contracts. And the fact that, the way that blockchain works is it's all conditional. And it's either, so you have a set of things that happen, and if they don't, the next thing doesn't happen. But if they do, then a series of other things happen. And so long as in truth and in reality and accurately, these things, whatever they are, whatever set of data or information are, as long as they happen, then the next thing can happen. And then the next thing can happen. And so when you have the ability to capture accuracy, then it totally changes everything. It takes smoke and mirror marketing and it turns it on its head. That's what it does, right? And more and more in this world, we need authenticity is what we need. And a few things that you've said really struck a chord with me. So I've been in natural product, branding and marketing for many, many, many years. And about 20 or 30 years ago, when some of the first brands were coming out, really, you've got the Ben and Jerry's and the Stonyfield Farms and the, those kinds of brands, and the Toms of Maine. Well, we all realized back then that we didn't know who the green consumer was. There were large numbers of us in branding and marketing who were working in, brand and product development and trying to reach into a marketplace where we were trying to reach people where it mattered that or the product or let's say produce was organic. They were elusive. You didn't know, right? You couldn't find them that easily. And these days you can find them really easily. But what we learned back then is that we just didn't have the data. So who were the people and who were the thought leaders and the trendsetters? So then we started to amass different amounts of research within the advertising community. And I think one of the biggest research companies would be Informa and, the folks over at New Hope. They're amazing. They do the Natural Product Expo, East and West, and they've got the, whole range of magazines and media platforms that support natural products. Well, even they didn't have a lot of the data. A guy named Steve Hoffman, actually, who's very active in our industry now, Steve Hoffman came up with a group and an acronym called LOHAS, which stands for Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability.
Hmm.
And LOHAS is something that was a really big thing. And it was sort of the way that we began to define the green consumer. And then as we began to define that green consumer and focus on market trends of sustainability and things like that, we realized that the best way to do this kind of marketing is by telling the story, truly. So the best way to do natural product marketing is to tell the story of the brand. And then why do you do that? And to whom are you telling that story, right?
Mhm.
So we realized back then that it made a lot of sense for us to, instead of just trying to target our markets, our natural consumer markets, by way of demographics, but we began to start targeting our consumers, and this is nationally across all media spectrum. We began to target our markets psychographically. So demographics are who they are,
Mhm.
and psychographics are why they do what they do. Okay. So if you're targeting a consumer group, let's say the natural consumer group, the natural market consumer, or the green consumer, there's a split, there's a demographic profile for them, right? So you've got, 64% women to 56% men, or 46% men, as an example. Is that 36? Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's not an even split. You've got about 2/3 women, 1/3 men in the natural marketplace. Their ages right now are ranging up because we're following an aging baby boomer market.
True.
Really, the population swell was the baby boomer. And then so we're following that. You can do this with all kinds of things, but it's not age, gender, ethnicity, geographic region, education, income. It's really, what do they care about? So the best way to do natural product marketing back then, and as it has emerged, has been to tell the story to people who care about the things that you're doing. And don't just tell it once or twice, tell it over and over and over again every time they see you. So that's why you'll see on like a Stonyfield Farms yogurt cup, the story is on the outside. It's on the lid, on the foil lid, without a plastic cover, because that's not as sustainable.
Mhm.
But the story's on the lid. And then when you take, or on the foil cover, and when you peel that back, the story is also on the bottom of that foil, right? So you're telling that story over and again. In general consumer packaged goods, telling the story has not been that important historically. The consumers don't really care, generally speaking. General market consumers don't really care that much about the story. What they really care about is price. So,
That's
and
true.
that's what you see. And that's why Walmart is the largest cash register in the world, next to Amazon now, I guess, right? But the story behind the brand has become more and more important to people, to consumers.
Times are
So,
changing for sure.
so earlier there were, early adopters and trendsetters in natural products. And what happened? Well, they went away from, just natural grocery stores, and now every major store has organic product. Even your convenience stores have organic sections, and it's taken 25 years to get there, right? And it's repeatedly telling that story. So what does that tell us as brand marketers of major brands? We have 20 major brands, and we do a lot of business and work with a lot of major hemp brands and others. So what does it mean to us? It means, well, obviously telling the story behind the brand is now more important to more people, right? The thing about GCAC is that it allows us to capture the brand story and connect that with more people. So that dovetails really nicely. There's an expansive field of prospects for products, and we're better able to tell the story to more people and keep it relevant. So all these different things really come into play. And I love GCAC. I love all of this. And, the concept of greenwashing is one that hasn't been lost on me over the years, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's definitely been a growing problem as people try to take advantage of the increasing tide of people caring more about where products are coming from and the narratives. And previously there was not a solid there was a information bottleneck, so to speak, that the current blockchain technology utilized through GCAC definitely helps relieve to add that transparency to it to kind of point out that the greenwashing cannot continue.
Right. It's kind of interesting to see how organic markets and organic consumerism has changed over the years. So early on, there were just a lot fewer people to whom it mattered. But the people to whom it mattered, meaning that uh, to them, what it meant is that they understood that if you have more inputs, then that's probably not as good, right? It's probably not as good. Like less is more.
Mhm.
So, like, let me give you an example of this. If I have an organic apple in one hand and I have a conventionally grown apple in the other hand, why does my organic apple cost more? I have fewer inputs that went into that. Really, it's grown on inorganic soil, right? Well, what that means is that there were no pesticides used on that soil, no toxic, you know, nutrients and things like that, and it was a more natural thing. So there are fewer inputs. Um, that should cost less, and it's producing healthier produce. So that's better. So if it took less to make better, then why does it cost me more for a conventional apple? Or rather, why does it cost me less for a conventional apple
Yeah.
when there was so much more that had to go into it? Right? It's like, why does that? So people began to wake up about 25 and 30 years ago. Really, you could pinpoint back in the 60s, right? Where, sort of it started to emerge that, you get a whole hippie culture and people are bucking against the system and stuff like that. And it was like you could hear this being said back then, right? Hey man, why are we doing it this way? Right? You could just hear that. Yeah, let's not worry about all those big, profit mongers. Let's just see if we can do this stuff on our own. Well, what people back then may not have realized is that, well, that's how we had done it all along. And they were just kind of calling for us to get back to the way it was in some ways.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I love hemp farming, right? Hemp farming actually takes farmers off of the 3-story high tractors that are all GPSed out.
Yeah.
You can, and Kate, and you could attest to this. There are, all around this country, there are farmers who are farming, huge tracts of lands, thousands of acres on some, tens of thousands of acres on some, millions and millions and millions all around.
Hyper
And the
centralized at this point. Yeah.
Totally, right? So what does that mean? Well, a lot of those farmers would never get off of those machines to go down into the field because they know what they've sprayed on those fields. They're staying off the
Yeah.
fields, they're staying in the cab, in the tractors, and some of them are even automated. Now, there are some who'd be willing to do it anyway and they don't care, right? But truly, hemp farming takes people kind of off the big tractor and it brings them down to the field, and you get to work with the land and with the plant, and you get to feel the impact and you get to experience that impact, and then you get to convey the impact. You get to give that back to other people, so it's, for me, it's really fascinating the way hemp works and hemp farming, and all of that works and what the opportunities are ahead of us.
Yeah. I think
It's true that in order to make advancements in the hemp industry, we have to be able to capture the track and trace data. We have to be able to capture, if you're going to be successful as a brand, you have to be successful telling the brand story. And it's really interesting that major consumer packaged goods brands often don't tell the story of the brand. And you know why? They're trying to hide it. They don't want people to know about all the stuff that's in it. They
yeah,
don't.
that's a
So
really
what?
good point. And but people want to know. And so
Well,
as
well,
that need gets met, I feel like it's going to apply pressure on those other brands as well.
well. Okay, so I think you're exactly right on that, Michael. I couldn't agree with you more, for sure. I think people do want to know. I think that I think that people don't always have the time to think about things and to dwell on them and to really consider all of the things that they're actually buying and putting into their bodies and feeding to their families. And I think really people are very busy. You know, if you have a family of 3 or 4 kids and a couple of parents, a few dogs, a cat, if you're Kate, you've got like 75 cats and 32 dogs and 4 horses and a mule, right? You're busy. You're busy.
Yeah, that's fair. It's true. It's if we go down to that idea of the actually Kate had mentioned it, the hierarchy of needs of things. Most people do care about where things are coming from. They're just too busy with their day-to-day lives to really
Really,
have the time to dive into it. But if you can do that through the use of better technology and take a lot of that legwork out for them, you will
mhm.
see that underneath most people do really care.
I couldn't agree more. I really do believe that. I think that there are just so many sort of, and this isn't a doom and gloom statement by any means. I think it's just reality. It's that there are so many complex matters that people deal with on a daily basis that, you know, whether or not the cereal inside the box that I just bought for my kid, whether or not that had pesticides used on the wheat when it was grown, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the fact that my kid said, as I was walking out and said, I'm going to the grocery store, he said, hey, you get me a box of Wheaties, but I want the frosted kind or the frosted, you know, like whatever it
Oh,
is. You know,
frosted with a chocolate dip or something in there
no, I
too.
want,
You got to get joy.
hey, can you get me, yeah, whatever brand, you know, whatever it is, right? It's like, I'm really not thinking about that. But now as a parent, I am definitely considering and thinking about what's going into my kids' bodies. But it seems that most consumer packaged goods that you're going to find on any grocery store shelf are generally accepted by consumers, or they wouldn't be there, right?
Mhm.
So it's really only a matter of brand selection at that point, and there are just very relatively minor differentiators from product to product to product. Most of the major brands and products, I mean, they're all being made by the same people, like literally. You know, they're all
Yeah.
just, private label is a big thing in this world, and private label manufacturing. We've done a very large amount of private label manufacturing, and I actually manufactured the Lucky's Market product. They were the first national retailer to bring out a full set of CBD products, and that was back in 2016. So Kroger had
That was
made it in.
before the big CBD boom even at that point, correct?
Well, there are a few people who were really instrumental in retail adoption. One of the things I love about living in Boulder is that in Boulder, we deliver more new natural products to the world than any other county in the country. It's a natural product, it's a haven and we love it. Like
Mhm.
there's so many natural products, so many startups and incubators and very forward thinking. It's literally the number one green market in the country, Boulder. And that's part of the reason I live here. I just love it here. It represents so much of what I love about, you know, life, I think. I've got the beauty, the mountains, the crisp air. There's a lot of, innovative, forward thinking people and stuff like that. And really this area is the epicenter of hemp, and it always has been. It kind of launched here. And Colorado was the first hemp state with the hemp pilot program back in 2014. But it was already being worked on, for a couple or 3 years pretty heavily before legislation happened here in Colorado to spark it.
Mhm.
But here in Boulder, you have so many. It's We have a sustainability mindset, and so if you were to look at a trend curve and you were to put the most green market next to the least green market, there is a very wide disparity. Okay, so within the scope of what ails us as society, what we need to do, obviously, and this is why the market keeps expanding more toward sustainability and more toward track and trace and authenticity,
Mhm.
it's that we need to coalesce our values as a society in ways that can produce results that are meaningful and positive, right?
Mhm.
Now, to say something like that, it seems just so idealistic, especially in the backdrop of today's political, and
Yeah,
economic,
I can see that.
world. But it's not just.
Inherently, yeah, there's truth to it, even though it's currently difficult to pull it off.
Yeah,
Apparently that is the direction that we should be heading. I agree.
yeah, for sure. I would agree too. I think that, the ability to now, you get to a tipping point in life, right? And in markets and things. And so we reached a tipping point some years ago. I'd probably peg it back to maybe 15 or 20 years ago, when there was a very clear tipping point where there were enough people, meaning that we achieved critical mass, where there were enough people around the world who realized we're doing a lot of things wrong and we can't keep doing it. Now, this is at about the time that I was really getting much more advanced in my ability to create brands and to bring brands to market, and I began to get a lot more successful. A lot of the brands I've worked on, you'll know, like Silk is Soy, like that whole white wave brand, Silk soy milk. I
Yeah.
was part of that, and there were
Yeah.
literally thousands of people involved in that. But I happened to be one of them, with many of the best and just most loved natural brands. I had the honor of working on, many of them in a lot of different roles. And so I started to build up an acumen, right? And an understanding and a knowledge base. And I started to see, as many other people saw around the same time, and we were all talking about it, we all realized that we've got real problems, and they're not just ours locally, but the
Yeah.
way to solve the
Worldwide.
problems is locally.
That's
So
true.
the way we all began looking at it was that we have these really large sustainability issues, and they're global issues. And with that being the case, because the best way to solve them is to do so locally, then we should tailor all of our marketing and branding and our outreach and all of our strategic and tactical plans with this new understanding, right? And you'll think back 15, 20 years ago, there was a big movement. It was all what? It was go local, buy local.
There's a lot of really good reasons for that, especially tied to just the astronomical impact in now increasing cost and
Yeah,
transferring food sometimes from country to country to even arrive, as in like it would go from one
yeah,
area where it's grown to another country where it's
yeah.
packaged and then sent all the way back over here, and that was technically the cheapest way to do it. And as you said, the world was very focused on cost for a long time. But as fuel costs are rising so much, therefore increasing transportation costs, that's kind of getting taken out of the equation too. And as you said, local is so much cheaper overall. If you remove all the subsidies and you remove all the extra dealings and so on, if you get anything local, whether it's a green bean or a side of beef, if you're getting it from the guy down the street, that's better
Or a
for everybody
spoonful of
involved.
honey. So we talked about that organic versus conventional apple and the inputs, and you just kind of brought that back up. Well, this is taking off on what you just said, because you exactly nailed it. The difference between these two things, right? This organic apple versus this conventionally grown apple. The big difference is price, right?
Mhm.
And the price is what it is, much lower for conventional because of artificial pricing. And the artificial pricing is the impact of subsidies. So
Mhm.
why don't we start subsidizing things that are better for us instead of the conventional? Conventional is it really conventional? Is it? It's unconventional.
The conventional
The
isn't very conventional
organic.
or convenient.
Right, right. It's kind of crazy, but hey, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for having me on. If you want to do this again or amend it or anything like that, by all means, let me know.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much for your time today. It was great getting to know you, US Hemp Brokerage, and how you are a member of the GCAC reseller program. If anybody has any questions, don't be afraid to send them over. We'll happily dive into them. But for now, Jeff, thanks again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.